This is the Alden Report.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Wicked Happy. The way you live your life depends on your outlook, and theirs is simple. Be Wicked Happy. Wicked Happy provides you with apparel to make you smile. So if you want to be wicked happy and you want to look wicked cool, then visit wickedhappy.com, and at checkout, enter in the code RADIO for an additional 15% off your entire order. Again, visit wickedhappy.com, apparel to make you smile.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Mike Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios. As always, I say how excited I am for my guests because I just love talking to not only interesting people, but people that are doing really cool things, that are doing big things, that are growing their business, that are also super, super talented. My next guest is a New York City-based artist. I think I would call her a street artist. I don't know. She might correct me. But she certainly is doing some really, really innovative stuff. She has millions of views on TikTok. She's doing some really fun stuff with her art, but I'm also super interested in how she's marketing it. You know, we have a lot of business people here, a lot of entrepreneurs here, and they probably want to figure out, hey, how are these people kind of, building businesses using social media? Please help me welcome Loz City. Loz, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So I know we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we figured it out. So I appreciate you bearing with me a little bit. So tell us a little bit about, first, let's get into, I think about, like, I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I think about, she's great at art. And I remember I was horrible at art. Photography was kind of my thing. I was kind of pretty good at that. But how does one decide that I'm going to be a full-time artist? Like, this is going to be my career, but I'd also like to maybe, just tell us like kind of how you got to that decision.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it definitely didn't start out this way. And pretty much my whole life, I didn't even think that it was possible. And I looked up to a lot of artists, but I never really understood how you could get there. And it's still really unbelievable. And I still don't really understand what I'm doing. But I did start out with a full-time office job. And I did go to college and everything like that. And it was all very unrelated to art. I just happened to, I guess during the pandemic, people became interested in my art, a lot of which were on social media. And it just enabled me eventually to go full time with this. So yeah, it wasn't something I was planning on doing. I didn't go to school for art. I always did art. I always loved art, but I never thought I could make a living from it. So it's been a wild couple years, I would say.
Well, again, you're doing some pretty big things pretty early on. And so we're here in Beverly, Massachusetts, and there's a great art school called Montserrat School of Art. It's a 4-year school. And when I was in college, one of my roommates was an art major. And I just remember, people kind of like, looking down upon that, because it's like, how are you going to make money, man? You're an art major. Like, what is that? And he was an art major, and I don't think he really even cared. I think he thought it was just easy. But yeah, I mean, so, you go to, what did you major in college?
Communications for television. So
yeah, okay.
I worked in television up until a couple of years ago. So yeah, I also was similar to your roommate. I did not think that people would be able to make money with art, and it is hard. It is a lot of work.
So let's talk a little bit about like how your family felt about this. So you go to college, you actually have a successful career, and then you decide, well, I'm done with this. I'm going to be a full-time artist. Like, what was the reaction like there? How did your friends and family feel about you making that decision?
Yeah, well, it was a kind of a long time in the making. I actually started making art and showing it on social media many years ago when I was still working full-time in an office. And for pretty much the first year or maybe 2 years, I didn't make a single sale. I wasn't actually even trying to sell it, or I didn't have a website. I didn't have any galleries. So I was just doing it for fun. And it wasn't really until the pandemic when people became interested in my art around the country, and a couple international clients as well, where I was just selling so much, ended up selling out my entire website store. And at that point, everyone was like, oh, when are you going to go full time? Like, why are you still working an office job? So it was actually a lot of push for me to go full time. And I was the last one to make that decision because I was really scared. And like I said before, I still have no idea what I'm doing. So.
So was that it? Was there really like was it that one kind of tipping point? I'd love to hear about, and we're going to talk, I'm going to try and pick your brain as much as I can about the social media stuff, because I'm so interested in how, people are just, building careers and lives and selling stuff on it. So was it like one particular thing that drove people there? Was there one particular person, or did you get written up in like, the New Yorker or something? Like, how did that happen? How did you sell out?
Yeah, well, I guess it kind of was a couple things in particular with TikTok that went viral. There were a couple pieces, a couple just really popular things that went I guess like a couple million views or something. So those were
Couple
really
million. Hold on. You got one. I think it has like 20 million views. So, but all right.
12, I think. Yeah, not 20 yet. But yeah, it was a couple of videos in particular and a couple specific pieces that people really gravitated towards. I think the first one to go viral was I do a lot of pieces with a saying called, "But did you have fun?" And a lot of people really were interested in that piece. So I guess that was the tipping point with my social media and what was one of the pieces that enabled me to quit my office job at the time.
So I use the term tipping point. Malcolm Gladwell, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he wrote the book Tipping Point, and he also in one of his other books talks about 10,000 hours. Right, you need 10,000 hours in order to truly be start to kind of see results or be an expert.
Yeah.
You had mentioned you've been doing this for a while. Do you feel like when that happened to you, you had already kind of put in all that work already? It wasn't just like an overnight success, right? Because a lot of people think that, oh, she just posted her stuff on TikTok and it just went viral and now she's famous and now she's making that's not really how it happened, right? I mean, you've been putting in the work, like you said, for a while.
Right. For many years where I got zero sales. And finally, when I did start selling, it was to friends and it was for way underpriced for what I even, paid to make the pieces. So there were many years where I didn't get any sales. And I do think I got lucky with timing of everything, because when I did get on TikTok early in the pandemic, a lot of people had nothing else to do. We were all stuck inside. So I think a lot of people were on social media and looking for new interests. And that was really helpful for me at the time. I don't know if it would be possible today because the world's opening back up and people aren't really stuck inside on TikTok. But I did get very lucky in that sense.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I hope we have a decent amount of time with you because I just got a ton of questions. Again, we're on with Loz City. She is a New York City based artist. I would call it pop art. I don't know if that's the right thing. Sometimes people might say the wrong thing, but I think it is. It's certainly, fun, like she had mentioned earlier. It also is thought provoking, and it's also just interesting, the whole process. We'll talk a little bit about the process as well. If you'd like some more information, if you're like me, if you like talent and you're interested in what she's doing, you can go to lozcity.com. It's LOZ city.com. You can also find her on Instagram and TikTok with the same thing. But go to her website, check it out, or just check her out on Instagram. Her logo kind of looks like a pill, and she's really doing some really, really cool stuff. So, all right. So you put in the work, you put in this time. Was there a moment where you thought that maybe this was just a waste of time and I'm just not going to do it anymore? Like, did you have the idea or kind of dream that you were going to do what you're doing now, and then it just didn't seem like it was going to work out? Or was this always more of kind of almost like a therapeutic thing for you and a fun hobby thing for you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because you hear it all the time where so many people, they're so close to giving up, and then that pivotal moment happens.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, the first couple of years, I didn't really ever create art with the intention of selling it, and I still like to think that I don't today. I try to make pieces that I like or I think people will resonate with. So it's not necessarily for the intention of selling. I'm glad that some of them do sell. But yeah, for the first couple of years when I wasn't making any sales at all, I definitely, when I looked at my bank account and I was spending all this money on pills and supplies and teaching myself this craft, I was like, this is a very expensive thing I'm doing, and I'm not seeing any payoff. And I definitely considered not making this collection anymore. I did have some positive feedback at the time, but just I guess I really didn't have a way to get people that didn't know me directly to see it. So yeah, there was a lot of moments where I was like, well, I guess this is the end of me creating art. I mean, this collection, I always am going to create art whether or not I'm selling it, just for fun. I enjoy creating things, and I have a lot of passions and ideas that I like to do. But yeah, in terms of this collection, I definitely almost gave up many times, including, all the time now when I release something and maybe it's not as well received as I would like. I definitely go into those little couple hours where I'm like, oh man, I messed this up. But then I have to remind myself it's not for the intention of selling, and not even really for the intention of people liking my art. I think people sometimes will see it and be uncomfortable or not like it at all. And that's okay. And that is the point of art. So I do have to remind myself of that there's going to be people that definitely don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, if they get a reaction, if you get a reaction, it's actually a good thing one way or the other.
Right, exactly. And I do have to remind myself not to quit art when that happens.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm just a big fan of talent. I was introduced to you and I saw your stuff and I was like, wow, I definitely would love to talk to you about the process. And, we talked a little bit earlier that, I've been in the art world. I backed an artist. His name's Blake Emery. And, I didn't know anything really about the art world other than buying it. And, we got him into Art Basel and we were there and we were in kind of one of the side events, Spectrum. And I'm sure you probably know who they are, maybe even been there. And I was overwhelmed and in awe of the amount of talent that's just out there in the world. And I think of the same thing with music. I have a couple friends that are fairly well accomplished musicians, and they make money, but they've come close and they've maybe even signed deals, but they never just kind of hit that critical mass that everybody would consider, quote, success. Talk about the competitive nature of it. And I'd also be curious about your community in New York. Is it a community of artists that kind of cheer each other on, or is it cutthroat? I'm not even really sure about what that world is like.
Right. Well, I would say in terms of it being like cutthroat or a competition or anything like that, that's kind of the beauty of what we do, is that you're not really competing with anyone else. All artists, probably in the world, I guess. I know there are some artists that are just copying others, but for the most part, all original artists are doing their own thing. So you never really are directly competing with anyone else. And I've never experienced that or any negative energy in that way. I think there's, if anything, it's a really great community where everyone's lifting each other up. I do a lot of collabs with New York artists and street artists. So I think the artists in general are very supportive and we try to help each other. And I've really only experienced that. So I guess I could be very lucky in that sense. But I think there are a lot of issues when it comes to like the artists interacting with like galleries, for example, take huge percentages, which is just normalized and accepted in the art world. So for example, a gallery usually standard is taking 50% or
Right.
more. So I think the competition isn't really amongst artists, it's amongst us and the industry itself, or like art fairs as well take a huge percentage. So yeah, it's not so much between us all, but it's definitely there.
I learned pretty quickly that the art shows are just a big giant scam. because in fact, the New York Art Expo, where we had a giant area and sponsored it and the whole thing. Behind me is actually Emery Vodka, which is we put Blake's artwork on there as a result of Brito. And for those of you who are watching, I first saw his art on the Absolute bottle, and you know, they said that there's going to be X amount of people there, and they literally bust people in and gave them like free drink tickets. It just turned into this giant just like party, and no one was there to buy art. And I was like, man, we were there to sell art. I'm a business guy. Like, that's why I was there. And I found that but I was also so excited. Basil, I feel like it's a little more pure, but some of these other ones, all over the country, I think they're just like any other trade show. They're just trying to get people to exhibit. And if you sell some art, I guess, you know, then it's a win. So you have this collection called Get Well Soon. That's the thing that kind of sparked my interest. I've lost family members. We've all probably been touched somehow by, you know, with a friend or a family member that have you know, either you know, no longer here on this planet, or they have just materially altered themselves as a result of, you know, taking, you know, prescription and even non-prescription type drugs. So you have this installation called Get Well Soon. They're pills. Talk about what inspired that. And then I also, I was reading a little bit, I think, on your website about the process of getting them. I'd just love to hear about how that works. You know, how do you get prescription drugs, I guess, sometimes, and you know, to you, and just mechanically, how's that work? I guess it's got to be kind of complicated.
Yeah. Well, first, I'd like to start off by saying I listened to your podcast with a doctor about the opioid epidemic in America, and I'm so sorry for all of your losses. Clearly, you have a different and unique perspective on my art than I guess other people who are not in your shoes. So yeah, I'm very sorry to hear that you've had such a personal experience with all of that. And in terms of, or to answer your questions, as for the inspiration, so I am an avid podcast listener. So I listen to a lot of philosophy podcasts, and I was listening to this one where I learned about this guy, a German philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer. And he believed that, well, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but one of his theories was that the world is constant, endless suffering. And he believed that one of the only ways that we can temporarily suspend that suffering is to experience artwork. So I was trying to modernize that idea and think, what do we do today to temporarily suspend our suffering? So for me, I thought of pills instantly. When you have a headache, you pop a pill. If you know, are whatever, need something else to pain to go away, birth control, whatever, you pop pills. So for me, that was my modern take on his theory, which is depressing and funny. To me, I guess his theory is pretty ridiculous, but I thought that was a funny take on the world. And I definitely wanted to think of what we would do today to temporarily suspend our suffering. And as for what you mentioned with the prescription drugs, so I actually don't use any prescription drugs in my artwork. Legally, I wouldn't be able to sell any prescription drugs in art. I don't really think I would have any standing in court if I did that. So I would probably be charged with like selling.
That's why I asked, because yeah, I mean, I just do have a little bit of experience in that space from family members, and it's, you know, it's fairly complicated, even just to get, you know, something like Xanax, like into a rehab or out of a rehab or something like that. Like it's if it's not yours, you know, you're carrying a controlled substance that's not yours. Yeah,
exactly. Yes, and I don't want to go to jail for control.
Although if you did, I bet it would make the papers. It might be a good thing for you.
I do really think that if I created art with prescription drugs, that it would be really powerful and meaningful for a lot of people. Unfortunately, though, again, I'm just not, I guess I would say I'm not like big enough yet to be able to support myself in an argument in a court why I did that.
Right.
I have been playing around with like creating fake pills where I cast them myself out of different materials. So I can, in theory, create something that looks kind of like prescriptions. Although in my experience, funny enough, I actually don't think the prescription drugs are very pretty, like, or colorful even. A lot of the
Right.
time they're white or pretty generic looking. I think these branded pills that I do use, like ibuprofen and Tylenol and stuff like that, they're colored so you recognize the brand. You know, a bright hot pink thing is a Benadryl. So that is what I mostly use in my artwork. Again, because I just don't want to go to jail. And how I get those, well, none of, like I said, nothing is controlled. So I can just buy any of the pills. There is no shortage in the world, or I
Right.
guess not in the world, but in America right now, there's no shortage of just like making more ibuprofen. So it's not so much about like, oh, where am I going to get, another bottle of Benadryl? Like they're truly everywhere. So I can buy them online or in a CVS or whatever. But I also have a recycling program. So people can send me their expired bottle of Advil, their expired aspirin, and send it to me. I refund them and thank them, give them a little gift. But I can create art with their expired and unused pills. And otherwise, they would just be throwing those pills out and they would end up in landfill. There are take back programs at some pharmacies where they can also take in your expired pills. But I thought this is like kind of a fun alternative. And I do have a lot of collectors who are doctors who get like samples of pills, and they can only do so much with 80 bottles of Advil. So they'll send those to me, which is awesome. And we're kind of like, we're unable to sell those because they're expired. So what else to do but put them into artwork for someone else to enjoy.
Wow, that is super, super interesting. I want to talk to you next about the business of it, if you don't mind. Kind of how it works, even some of your transactions, because Blake Emery, the guy that I'm friends with and worked together and did some big things with him. I remember the first time we got connected because I just bought some of his art, and it was just interesting kind of how the whole thing went down. So again, we're on with Loz City. She is a New York based artist. She's doing some really, really interesting things. I think it's very thought provoking. I also think it's when I first saw it, if you've listened to me before or followed any of my stuff, I'm obviously a fan of art, and sometimes art is, like they say, in the eye of the beholder. You either like it or you don't, which she kind of touched upon earlier. I think her stuff, again, is thought provoking, but it also just brought out something in me. And I said, hey, I'd love to have you on the podcast. So if you'd like some more information about Loz, you can go to lozcity.com. You can also check her out on Instagram and TikTok. And look, TikTok is I think the number one social media platform out there. So if you don't have it, you should get it anyway, because it's just awesome if you just want to sit there and check out stuff. But she's got some great things on her TikTok account and also on her Instagram account. But again, you just go to lozcity.com. And if you heard a little bit again of what she's doing, her art not only is beautiful and thought provoking, but she's also, recycling things that normally would just get thrown away or sit in a landfill and could potentially be harmful to the environment and others as well. And her art is actually doing something in addition to just creating beautiful art. So again, go to lozcity.com.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Wicked Happy. The way you live your life depends on your outlook, and theirs is simple. Be wicked happy. Wicked Happy provides you with apparel to make you smile. So if you want to be wicked happy and you want to look wicked cool, then visit wickedhappy.com, and at checkout, enter in the code RADIO for an additional 15% off your entire order. Again, visit wickedhappy.com, apparel to make you smile.
So the business side of it, Blake, man, I tell you, when I first met Blake, it was a kind of a crazy story. I bought his art. It's a long story, but I remember when I went to meet him in New York, and I, took the train in and I went to his place. He was actually squatting in a brownstone somewhere in Brooklyn. And it was wild the way he was living. It was somewhat of a gypsy kind of lifestyle, family and the whole thing. But he was just, he was making it work for him. And I was in awe and also kind of concerned at the same time about all of it. The classic starving artist we all hear about, right? And I think he was that, but he talked about the art hustle, right? It also reminds me, I want to talk a little bit about kind of even the dark side of the art world, if you don't mind, but the business side of it, selling your pieces. Talk about that, because I think I don't know if you saw the podcast when I had Charles Fazzino on. I went and he's in New York, and I went to his gallery, and I saw he has like a mini factory, kind of like, like what Warhol had, or even what like Brito has. Talk about the beginnings of you kind of doing your stuff. And as you continue to grow, you're running a business, right? You're not just an artist anymore, right? So you're selling your stuff. What's that like for you? Has that changed kind of, how you look at it? Has it taken away from your day? Has it made it less fun because you have to kind of, process credit cards and ship stuff and put it in boxes and all that other stuff?
Yeah. Well, I like to think of, whenever I talk about the business of my art, I like to think of this quote from another artist that I know, but he said that artists are the worst businessmen and businessmen are the worst artists. And I always laugh at that because I, in my experience, would agree with my own personal business experience. I really, when it comes to business, I am a lot of times winging it. And I'm sure I get this all the time. I have a lot of friends in business and they tell me I should be doing certain things differently. And I'm like, I just want to create art. I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to negotiations or making these sales. I really apparently am doing things wrong or in a roundabout way. So I'm still learning that part. I didn't go to school for business, so that's all still new to me. And I'm always looking for suggestions and stuff because I do really love the art and I want to focus on my art. And whenever it comes to the business side of things, I kind of like to do that as quickly as possible and kind of get it over with or pass it along to friends or to an assistant. So I really try not to focus too much on it because I do think that when I kind of to your point, when I am focusing on selling or the business side of things, it does take away from my own personal enjoyment of creating my art. And then also just, I think the meaning for my collection in general and for what I like to do. So yeah, that's something I'm still kind of learning as I go. It's been a learning curve the last 2-ish years. I just partnered with a gallery. So that'll be another new experience as I go into this next year where I'll be sending them pieces. And if they sell, again, they'll get 50%. And then in, I guess, a couple months, I'll see the other 50%. So that'll be another fun thing for me to play around with. But at this point, I'm mostly selling just for my website, which does make it pretty easy for me to manage everything. And again, it's just as simple as possible. And that's, what I need at this point.
Now, I learned again, listen, by the way, what you're talking about is that's just how we all do it, right? We all just figure it out. And then, I told people when I talk about it in my first book, when I was 14, I forged my birth certificate to get a job at Chuck E. Cheese's. And by the time I left, I was running the kitchen at 17. They thought I was 18. And, I didn't know how to make a pizza when I got there. I didn't know how to make the dough when I got there. You know what I mean? So it's just like everything else. You just figure it out. We all just figure it out, and everybody acts like they know, but they don't know until they figure it out. So I think you're doing a great job. Now, I learned about this thing in the art world called giclées, right? I didn't even know what a giclée was, and or what others would even call like lithographs or prints, serigraphs, things like that. What about, so when you create, like I'm on your website right now, and man, it's just awesome stuff. Again, it's lozcity.com. So like I'm looking at, for instance, I'm just scrolling up for those of you that are watching. Let me think here. Like the one that says "You Got Me So High." Okay, that's sold, right? So on your website, it's sold. Or even I'm trying to look. Oh, the kind of the Rolling Stone-esque one, with the tongue and stuff. what about like, is it just one and done, or do you have multiple editions as well?
Yeah, so for those two pieces in particular, those were actually two collab pieces I did with two artists slash street artists. One LA artist, Dirk Cobain, who him and I have collabed with a lot, and the other one was Mioke Madness, who is a Bronx-based street artist. So for those ones, those were one and dones. The reason for that is because of the medium I work with is epoxy resin. So it's shiny. So whenever I resin over these pills to make them pretty much indefinitely cast there is going to be a glare because it's super shiny. And so taking a photo for like a print for multiple editions is really hard. I can edit photos to an extent. I can also take the photos before it's resined. There are ways for me to do it, but I always felt like the originals were very special, and prints are actually kind of a lot of work. I mean, obviously not as much work as an original, but I do have to, go and pick up the prints and work with a printer to color match, and then I usually don't end up making enough for that to be worth it, for at least for like a smaller drop. I did recently do edition prints with another artist, a New York, Staten Island based artist, D Love. We did prints, we did 15 editions of this one collab we did. So we sold the original and then we released 15 editions of it. And that is, in theory, business wise, the right thing to do, right? Is to kind of be more hands off and just sell editions and prints. And I do hope that I can offer more of that in the future. But again, with my medium, it does make it really hard. And even for that print, it was so difficult to get a photo just to use because the pills I used on the original were shiny, and they're still shiny in the print, but it's very hard to photograph. So that's kind of the thought behind that. I will be doing more edition stuff later on to sustain this business. So that's the
It's
hope.
funny. I went through that process with Blake, and we hired photographers that's all they do. They take photos, and it was interesting how they did it. I thought that they just bring in a camera and just take a photo. That's not actually how this guy did it. At least he was actually taking almost like photos of like sections of the painting in order to put it together after. And I was like, wow, okay, now I know why it was actually so expensive to do it because it was a bit. And I think of your art, I mean, a lot of it is 3D art too, right? So you'd have to just make these things like I had mentioned earlier, Charles Fazzino, or even Brito to a certain degree of like some of his sculptures and stuff. If you're gonna do it, they're gonna have to create. Like behind me is a bronze of Horton from Dr. Seuss, and that stuff just is a lot of work. So NFTs, what are your thoughts on NFTs? Because I've been in the crypto space for a long time, and NFT to me is nothing actually new. But obviously was it Beeple, I think, that really just made that huge splash. The first thing I did was I actually reached out to, and I'm going to connect you with her, Angela China, and she's got Gumshoe Art out of New York. So definitely, I think you guys definitely do a collab. What are your thoughts on NFTs? Are you going to do NFTs? Do you have NFTs? Because I look at it for artists is like, this is it for you guys. Like, this is such a great opportunity for you to truly make a real crazy, just a great living, right? It's not going to work for everybody. And there's a bunch of just bullshit out there already, but what are your thoughts on NFTs? Are you going to do NFTs? And let's hear what you think.
Yeah, well, so I don't currently have NFTs or any dropping. I am planning on it. I definitely have had many meetings about this. This is probably the number one question I'm asked by everyone as soon as they hear that I do art. They're like, oh, what about NFTs? Are you doing one? So it's definitely something I'm planning on doing. And I have a couple of business partners already in that space, and we're working on some things. My thoughts on NFTs are, I see that they are great when it comes to the artists continuously getting shares when, when it's sold on to many different collectors. I do love that aspect of it. And I think that's a huge appeal for artists. And it's something that we have never had ever before, even with physical art. So I think that's really great.
That's I want to cut you off right there. So that what she touched upon was, I think a lot of people don't realize, it's not talked about a lot, but with NFTs, because they're on blockchain and smart, smart contract technology, that every time one of an NFT is sold, the original artist, depending on what percentage they set it on, they are getting paid on what they call the secondary market. And so it's a beautiful thing. Like she said, once art is sold in a gallery, that's it. And, it's a one-time, kind of benefit to them. But with an NFT, it can be sold multiple times over and over and over again. I mean, Gary Vee was talking about his V friends and stuff. And he's like, I made $250,000 last night. He's obviously huge, but I think that, like you said, I think that's just a beautiful thing for you, because it just, I don't know. I mean, you should be paid over and over again, right?
Yeah, I think it's so great. And I'm excited to get into the space for sure. And in terms of what I think about NFTs, like I said, great opportunity, and I will be doing it. I definitely don't think that it's going to replace physical art. I think it's just going to be an addition. I kind of see it kind of like when Kindle came out and people were reading books on these little iPads and little Kindles. I do think it's going to be kind of like that, where people sometimes now are still reading on Kindles, but there are a lot of people that are still reading physical books. I'm one of those people. So I love creating physical art with my hands. I like to say that I'm an artist, but I also am a fabricator. I love making things. I do woodworking and mold making and other things like that. So for me, it is harder to sit on a computer and create art. There are fully digital artists and fully visual artists. Eventually, I would like to do both, but I think we're going to see with NFTs, I think, more full digital artists, or more people going from physical to digital art. And then I also think there's still going to be people that are just adamantly just one or the other. And yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I do think there is a lot of hype around it right now. So I'm curious to see where it's going to go in a couple of years, and what pieces are going to continue to make money. And so yeah, I'm excited it's a really cool opportunity, and we're living in a cool time to be seeing this right now. So I hope it's not just a hype, but yeah, only time will tell.
Yeah. I mean, I think the ones that are going to survive are the ones that have not only utility. I don't think necessarily utility is as important as what people think, but I think the ones that are going to survive have a true fan base, like yourself, right? And you have actual, people that enjoy your stuff, and not just people that are just buying it just to flip it and trying as a money-making opportunity. That those are the ones that I think will survive. And I just see them now popping up all over the place, and it's just kind of ridiculous. But like anything else that comes out that's new, there's a massive gold rush, and people think they're just going to become overnight, they're going to sell their stuff for 69 million and and think that they're just going to hit it big. All right. What before I let you go, what's new? What do you have coming up? Do we have anything that's going to be dropped on TikTok that we need to pay attention to? I'm on your website, and I was like, you know what? I don't think you can buy anything in your website right now. But what's next for you?
Yeah, I unfortunately, right, my website store is very sold out at the moment. I've had a couple of rushes where a lot of things sold quickly. So right now I'm pretty much fully sold out. I definitely have a lot of big projects coming up. A couple larger pieces that are similar to what you've seen, but I also have a really exciting project that I'm working on right now that's going to completely flip the switch. It's still in the medical, I guess, not medical field, but medical umbrella, but it's not pills. So I'm kind of making transitions into other things that are not pills, slowly but surely. And then in addition to that, more affordable things that are going to be more widely available for people. I still love and want to primarily be a fine artist, where I'm selling fine art for collectors directly or with a gallery, but I would love to have more things that are affordable for other people. And that is an interest of mine, especially with TikTok. I have some younger people who are interested in things, but can't necessarily spend a lot of money on fine art. So maybe some merchandise is coming soon, just some clothing and fun things like that, more stickers. So just kind of having a wide range of things in addition to this one exciting project that is going to flip the switch on the pills. So yeah,
I
lots of fun.
was going to say I was going to let you go, but you just really touched on something that's also interesting. And I think it's a delicate situation for some people for whatever reason within the art world is, the commercialization of, kind of your art. You mentioned, stickers and we talked earlier about prints. And I think Brito is just, done it brilliantly. I know others have as well. And, there's this kind of, I think, group of people who believe that, you're selling out if you do stuff like that. But I think people now are starting to realize that, you have a brand and you're just building a brand. Obviously you're not afraid to do that, but is there a lot more thought process into it? In other words, you're not going to put your stuff on, I don't know. I mean, Brito has luggage, right? I mean, do you have a kind of a hard stop at things you just won't do, or is it just something that you just kind of comes to you as it comes?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say that I used to be on that same train of thought, I guess, where I didn't want to have or to really focus on anything besides the fine art. And that's why for so long I've only done the fine art and I haven't had anything that's more widely accessible, because I was like, I don't want to sell out. I don't want to start making keychains for people. And that's still something that I'm actively thinking about. As I go forward, I'm going to choose things that I think represent what my vision is for not only my brand, but my art, and things that are still going to resonate with people in a way that is, just similar, I guess, to the feelings that they would get with my art. Oh,
I'm
there you go.
holding up a keychain right here of
A Banksy keychain. I love it. Yeah.
Banksy.
Yeah, it's great. I definitely want to be careful when I'm making that transition. But in terms of where I would like draw the line, I don't know if I definitely want to make sure that it's still clear that I am an artist and not a business. That's always been something that's been really important to me. I am not just trying to sell things. I'm trying to sell things with meaning and purpose that people want because of their individual relationships with medicine or pills. So that's going to be something that I'm going to use going forward when I'm creating things that are more widely accessible for people. But I don't want to say like I'm never going to do one thing.
Right.
But yeah, I'll definitely be careful of it as I go forward.
One more question, I think, before I let you. I mean, I promise. No, I don't know. I can't promise that.
I have nothing else going on today. Yeah, okay.
What about, I don't know if you know, but I'm a lawyer, and, a lot of stuff I did, when I was practicing was, intellectual property based. And in fact, I remember, with Blake, we have a bunch of copyrights and trademarks. In fact, we had a guy literally knock off one of our paintings. I mean, just stroke for stroke. I mean, it was just identical. What are your thoughts on intellectual property, trademarks, copyrights? What are you doing to protect it? Have you thought about that? Just to love to hear your kind of your I know that's the business side of it, but I tell people all the time, your intellectual property is your most valuable asset, especially even just, your logo itself. Like, have you taken steps to make sure you're protecting that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I definitely, especially early in the pandemic, really for the first like 2 years of the pandemic, as I was showing my art online, people were copying it directly, exact designs and size of my pieces. And that was really hard for me at the time, especially because I was much lesser known, I guess, and not making sales like I am now. So that was really hard in the beginning. And it was even harder when I would try to, I guess, defend myself and be like, hey, like, this is
what the fuck is what I would say.
Right. This is my artwork that you just, copied directly. And people would be like, oh, you didn't create this. Like, this wasn't your idea. And I was like, I did months of research prior to ever creating my pill art to make sure it wouldn't look like any other artist's pill art. I could list maybe 10 other artists that work with pills, but no one does what I do. And then all of a sudden I started on TikTok seeing a lot of artwork that was exactly mine. So that was really hard. Now it really depends. If someone's trying to make make a piece of art that's they're saying, oh, this is a Loz City piece, that is a big priority for me. That would be a huge problem. When people are creating art that I guess you would consider like a knockoff of mine, if they are trying to sell it, it really depends on how closely it looks like mine. It's an idea, I think, that people see and they're like, oh, I can make something similar and then do it. Unfortunately, I don't, with a copyright, even unless it's an exact replica, I don't really
Right.
have much control over it. I do now look at it as in a more flattering way, that people are, wanting art of mine so badly that they are knocking it off or creating it themselves. So now I'm more flattered by it. I do think that I have enough supporters and people that love original art by original artists that I don't have to feel as threatened as I used to. And I can now look at it and be like, oh, well, I guess, this is a nice thing, a flattering thing. But if it was interrupting my business or if it was impacting my sales, obviously that would be a completely different story and I would take action. Luckily, it hasn't been too bad recently, but I definitely still do. I mean, if you go on Etsy now and type in like pill art, you're going to see a bunch of knockoffs, and those were never there prior to my art being released. And I know because I took screenshots of Etsy prior to making my pill art. So yeah, it's a really interesting space to be in, especially when people don't believe that you were the first one to do it. So that's fun. But that is, again, why I'm kind of transitioning into other things besides just my pill collections. I do different series. So I'm always creating new ideas within the pills, but then also transitioning into other things, other topics as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's an unfortunate thing that you do have to deal with and pay attention to, especially for someone like you that is literally on the rise and continuing to gain followers and become more well known within the art space. It's just it's an unfortunate thing, but you do have to pay attention to it. So listen, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you're watching right now, man, I'm just super inspired by what you're doing. As I said earlier, I'm a big fan of art. I'm really also appreciative of your thoughts and how you talk to us about the process. And again, if you'd like some more information about Loz City, you can just go to lozcity.com, LOZ city.com. You can check her out on TikTok and also Instagram. She's got millions of views. I think, the biggest one is like only 13.1 million, but I think my TikTok, mine the most is a couple hundred. So check out what she's doing there. It's really interesting too. She shows the process. We didn't talk a lot about the process, but she does show the process, which is really, really interesting. And again, she's doing some really, really cool stuff. So if you're a fan of talent, if you're a fan of art, definitely check her out. Give her a follow on Instagram and TikTok. Again, it's Loz City. Loz, thank you so much for being here. My name is Mike Alden. That's Loz City, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Wicked Happy. The way you live your life depends on your outlook, and theirs is simple. Be wicked happy. Wicked Happy provides you with apparel to make you smile. So if you want to be wicked happy and you want to look wicked cool, then visit wickedhappy.com, and at checkout, enter in the code RADIO for an additional 15% off your entire order. Again, visit wickedhappy.com, apparel to make you smile.